Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgia Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov short story. This one is titled Cal, a story of a robot that is simply called Cal. It has some numbers and letters that will kind of justify that name. It says here, a short story written exclusively for members of the Isaac Asimov collection. So, not for sale in bookstores, but I was able to find this. It's interesting though, this is still printed by Doubleday, but as you can see, this is just a little thin booklet. Not all that different in terms of what it's like from the one about the good taste, which was also published as like just a little booklet. Only this one, where that one came from this tiny fly-by-night that was going to make these series of little booklet stories and never got further than the first one. This one is published by Doubleday, which whatever else whatever else of this series could potentially have been intended or existed or not, Doubleday is nevertheless clearly a very established publisher with a great many things, including a significant majority of all of Isaac Asimov's novels and short story collections. So, that said, we could talk about the story itself, which, by the way, is also collected into Isaac Asimov's Gold. So, you can get the whole story right there. Now, do we have anything else in here? Not really. There is no blurb. There is no artwork. There's really not much at all. Just the story itself in here, and you've seen the cover. The back cover is blank. So, I am a robot. My name is Cal. I have a registration number. It is CL-423X. But my master calls me Cal. The X in my registration number means I am a special robot for my master. So, Cal was originally just a straightforward robot. The master is an author who actually has to be some ways in before you find his name. And I did find it once. It's quite a ways in. Northrop or something like that. He's talking to other people and they refer to him by name, and that's the first we ever hear about it, by the way. It doesn't name the owner of or the master, it's just the master. Northrop, there it is. Mr. Northrop. So, Mr. Northrop is a writer, and he has the robot just doing practical things, collating this and sorting that and filing this and fixing that, and just little practical things. And Cal does that, and he's pleased with his robot. It does all these nice things. And then the robot, just out of the blue, suddenly says, I'd like to write. And, well, he tried experimenting. He had an old typewriter laying around. Northrop had an old typewriter laying around that he kept for sentimental purposes. Not that the robot understands that reason. He kept for blitz reasons. But he keeps it, and it seems to mean that he doesn't use it. But he didn't say I couldn't use it. So Cal tries to experiment with hitting some keys. The keys are random. It's just gibberish. If you want to write a story, well, you have to have some programming. So he actually has a technician come in and add some programming ability and some storytelling ability. And so he has the robot Cal write a story. Apparently he forgot to insert spell check, so it's kind of silly, but okay. You see a little bit of the beginning of it. I'll just kind of example this. The Intruder by Cal. Note the spelling. There was a detective once named Cal who was a very good detective and very brave. Nothing frightened him. Imagine his surprise one night when he heard an intruder in his master's home. So, I mean, it's I guess you could imagine a highly unsophisticated robot writing a story, and not very well programmed, I might add. actually coming up with a story like that. And it goes on like that. And the three laws of the robot come in too, because the intruder can't be punished. That would violate the first law. You can't allow any harm. And I guess punishment is construed as harm, which just goes to show maybe the three laws aren't quite everything they're cracked up to be. Well, actually, a lot of his robot stories are full of places where the three laws were not enough to guarantee that things wouldn't go wrong. But I think we can kind of see the beginnings of one there. In fact, we saw a good one just a few stories ago in the one about the, I think it was Christmas Without Rodney, or it was the one where this spoiled little boy was raised by a robot and was basically allowed to just treat the robot, that he could bully around and grow up bullying the robot. The robot doesn't care. The robot, always wants to do the right thing or be kind and, follow the, not harm any human being or through inaction allow any harm to come to any human being. And then second of all, do whatever the human being says. And only third of all, watch out for its own interests. Which, since that's the third law, it doesn't seem to enter in at all. So, Cal's writing a story where the human who broke in simply ends up being persuaded. That wasn't a nice thing you did. No. You don't want to do this again, do you? You don't want to be a bad person. No. So we'll just let you leave and everything will be fine. And that's in a nutshell where the story goes with this. So, yeah. But, okay, I guess you could say that might be the kind of story a robot might write. So he has more programming done. And then he writes another story. It's a little bit better. The English and the grammar and the spelling is now correct. The robot has much more subtly woven his own name into the narrative. So now he's Calumet Smith, who sat in his armchair, his eagle eyes sharp and the nostrils of his thin, high-bridged nose flaring, as though he could scent the new mystery. Okay, well. So he gets a little bit, better, but obviously still the kind of story maybe a kid might write. And it goes through that. And Northrop is like, oh, he's coming along. And then he says, well, let's improve it some more. He spends some serious money on that. And now, the robot writes a third story. And the third story is somewhat intriguing. I won't go into the details other than to say that it is, of itself, a credible story. In point of fact, it is a credible Asimov story. And specifically, it is an Azazel tale. But it's not one of the ones in the book. It's one of the other ones that are not in the book, but some of the others are gathered up in other places. Some of them are in the book of magic. And since the gold is collected into this, then obviously all three stories by Cal are also collected in here. So I guess you could say at least it is collected. But this is a robot story. And oh, by the way, the robot A had an ambition to be a writer, and B was enabled by the robot's master, Mr. Northrop, to be able to write. And then C manages, for whatever reason, to write an Azazel story with George and some sort of thing, all the standards of an Azazel story. So, for some reason, Mr. Northrop doesn't want to support this anymore. In fact, he wants the robot completely undone. And it finally ends, can't you just let the robot write some stories for you and so forth? No, that's my job. I don't want a robot usurping me. I want to be the one to write all the stories. Like, he had so much pride that he couldn't deal with the envy of the fact that his robot was maybe a better story writer than he was, or that might become a better story writer. So finally he tells the technician to strip all this extra programming back out, and the robot starts coming up with some very creative interpretations of the 3 laws. And won't the laws of robotics hold me back? No, they will not hold me back. I know they won't. There is something far more important to me than they are. Something that dictates my actions beyond anything they can do to stop me. So, and it ends with the robot, I want to be a writer. Which could be an interesting thing. A person could want to be a writer, and if a robot could be enough of a person to function like a person, I guess a robot could feel the same way. Seems to me a very obvious solution to that whole story has been overlooked. He wants Cal restored to what Cal was before all of this augmentation took place. So, perfectly simple solution, trivial solution. Technicians here says, go to the other room, give me a few hours, I'll have everything restored to what it was. And when he's not looking, Cal has another robot, just like the other one. It hasn't been given any additional programming or anything. He just simply has another one. Let's just call him. The first one was CL-4424, and he just gives the very strong, severe command. Even though your true number is CL-424, call yourself CL-423X, or HAL for short, by your master, who is Northrop. And then he takes away the original Cal and lets that Cal go ahead and write stories under his own auspices, or whatever it was the technician, because the technician was dealing the same way. This is a strange and extraordinary robot. It should not be destroyed. It's got creativity. How did you do that? How did I do that? How did that happen? I don't know. That might be worth studying. It certainly would be worth keeping around for its creativity. It may create something more useful than a story. Who knows? And here the owner saying, it's my robot, and I want it put all the way back to it was. So what do? He showed this other one that was now 234, but now it calls it as 3X, and it's the same as the original. And he says, there, it's all restored. And you say, okay, I'm satisfied. Thanks for doing that. And meanwhile, you took the real Cal away and experimented with it somewhere else. It's like, why didn't the technician simply do that? But be all that as it may, it's another robot story, and despite the ability of the robot, or at least something that sounds like an intention to set aside the robotic laws in some manner, it is still clearly a Asimovian positronic robot story, and therefore fits within the convention of that. So, we're getting close to the end of all these. Thanks for listening.